I'm also a journalist out of work currently. I hope to rectify that problem. I was let go, as the polite term means, sacking, by the editor of the Sunday Independent, for whom I was writing articles mainly in support of Brexit. And it wasn't the fashion of the paper at that time to publish such articles, and I was dropped from the staff. It showed something in journalism which I hadn't met so strongly before, which is a failure to have complete balance by the editorial direction of a newspaper and to allow eccentric views to be put forward if that is what the journalists they employ wish to do. Instead of that, the paper adopted a particular line, not a line that I approved of, and that led to my departure from the staff. So it brought to an end 50 years as a journalist in this country, some of the highlights of which I'd just like to advert to briefly. There will come a time later in today's discussions when I hope Declan Gandy will be here and we'll be able to talk about his impact on journalism and on politics in Ireland and on changing the minds of people in Ireland, which he was very effective at doing. And I'm glad he is on his way here and that we will discuss that. One of the most troubling and difficult jobs I undertook began as journalism and ended in the writing of a book about the industrial school situation in Ireland. 62 schools spread across every county in the country, filled with children who were starved, beaten, ill-treated, not educated, their teeth not attended to, and they suffered from the impact of that method of looking after them, which lasted the whole of their lives. I knew them, some of them, during the time when they were elderly men, and certainly some of them died when I was still writing about the Irish Gulag. And their testimony to me was deeply and lastingly poignant. I would like to write again about that subject because I still think it lingers over the country in a shameful way. Earlier than that, I had a happier time in journalism. I was a friend of Charles Haughey at the beginning of his political career. I wrote speeches for him. He lived in a house that my wife's uncle's family had owned for 100 years, and I went there to tell him a little bit about their life at Abbeyville, and only when he ran into trouble politically and in connection with an arms crisis that he was behind did we part company as friends, and I turned my attention to examining him as a politician and writing confrontational articles which made him very angry, made him tap my telephone as well as that of Geraldine Kennedy, and gave me a notoriety that I'm not sure I'm very happy to live with for the rest of my life. But nevertheless, that was part of my upbringing as a journalist and part of the determination that I felt journalists have to have, which is to tell the total truth and to tell it irrespective of the views of the paper that he is writing for. And I want to give you one up-to-date example and end with that. I read, of course, with great concern about the defeat of Theresa May in respect of her cabinet when she had completed her document for leaving the EU. One of the articles was made up of views that she had expressed early during the campaign about what she was trying to achieve. And the article then ran with what she had achieved in the document. And it made painful reading, because what was left out of it was the role played by the EU. All the things that were raised as comments about her speeches were delivered in derision of her earlier expectation and in the fulfillment of a list of demands made by the EU, which Britain, of course, cannot accept. I don't think that the document that she presented this week is other than some kind of ploy to bring honesty and correct interpretation into the battle of wills that's going on in the House of Commons at this time. But nobody wrote about it. I sat and read the piece and thought to myself, the blame for this situation rests with the EU. They repeatedly loaded her shoulders with things she could not deliver, and they were at odds with things she had espoused as objectives for herself as leader of the government. So we are left with that vacuum where the EU went silent, and when nobody noticed that they had gone silent and said, but the EU are responsible for what has happened to her. It's not herself. It's not her mistakes. It's the EU that have formed around her proposals incredibly difficult points to address and put right. I'm waiting for the outrun from that situation, and I remain, as I have been since Cameron led us into the referendum, fully in support of Britain leaving. I hope they will achieve it one way or the other, and it gives strength and heart to the people I'm addressing here today, whose interest in detachment from the EU is more than just an interest. It has an emotional tug to it, which I fully endorse.